Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
This morning, the first United States military court session began in Baghdad to try 3 American soldiers involved in the Abu Ghraib prison scandal. The 3 defendants are accused of mistreatment and committing sexual crimes against Iraqi prisoners at the Abu Ghraib prison west of Baghdad. 2 of the 3 defendants are accused of mistreatment of prisoners, as seen in the pictures that were circulated last April. Meanwhile, the lawyer of one of the American defendants stated that he will request the testimonies of United States President George Bush and United States Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld. Early this morning, the United States military court began its initial sessions at the conference center in Baghdad, preparing for the trial of 3 out of 7 United States soldiers accused of torturing and humiliating Iraqi prisoners at the Abu Ghraib prison. This scandal was revealed last April. Judges conducted the hearing session. The defense lawyer of one of the charged Americans is demanding that the trial be moved outside of Baghdad, saying that the situation there is not stable. However, the American judge refused his request. The media was not allowed in the court building for different reasons. The names of the United States soldiers were confirmed, and they are Ivan Frederick and Charles Gress, who may be receiving a sentence of 26 years in prison and may be demoted to the lowest military ranks. In addition, they would be released from the United States military service. Sergeant Javal Davis is the 3rd defendant and may be facing a sentence of 8 years in prison, demotion, and release from United States military service as well. One of the defendant's attorney is asking to bring in General John Abizaid and Lieutenant General Ricardo Sanchez and Jeffrey Miller. The judge agreed to call them in.
To change the place where the court-martial is being held.
We had requested to change the place where the court-martial is being held from Iraq to the United States or any other safe place to ensure the safety and credibility of the witnesses, but the court denied this request.
Meanwhile, relatives of the detainees held at the Abu Ghraib prison gathered in front of the infamous prison, demanding their release. Many of them believe that the trial will not be fair because the judges are Americans. According to them, the trial should be conducted under the United Nations umbrella. Earlier, United States General Kaprynski, in charge of Abu Ghraib prison, stated that she was only complying with orders, adding that General Jeffrey Miller gave her orders to treat Iraqi prisoners like dogs. The objective of this trial may be to distract the Iraqis' attention, since the issue of Abu Ghraib prison is already dying down. Iraqis are hoping that this trial will not be a cover for other violations taking place. Hamza Hussein for Abu Dhabi Television at the Conference Center, Baghdad.
Hundreds of residents of Fallujah took to the city's streets on Monday to protest the U.S. bombing of a building in the city over the weekend, in which at least 20 civilians were killed. U.S. officials said their forces targeted a safe house for Al-Qaeda's Abu Mus'ab al-Zarqawi, but a senior officer of the U.S.-backed Fallujah Brigade underscored that rescue operations uncovered only the belongings of women and children. Speaking at the rally, local cleric Abdelhamid Jumaili urged Sayyid Muqtada al-Sadr to continue with his resistance against U.S. occupation troops, and in a display of unity among the Islamic communities, both Shiite and Sunni Muslims joined Monday's protest, carrying banners condemning the airstrike and denying the presence of Al-Qaeda's Abu Mus'ab al-Zarqawi in the western town. Police in Istanbul used water cannon, tear gas, and armored vehicles to disperse thousands of demonstrators who barricaded streets and threw petrol bombs to protest an upcoming NATO summit in the city. The protest was one of an ongoing series against the summit, which is to be held end of June and be attended by heads of state and government, including US President George W. Bush. Earlier reports on protests around the country said one person was injured in the south when demonstrators tried to approach a high airbase at Incirlik, formerly used by British and US planes to patrol Iraq. Turkey has announced massive security measures for the summit. A key issue to be discussed will be a possible NATO role in Iraq.
Bugün birçok başörtülü kızımız üniversite kapılarından geri döndü.
In Algeria, troops have killed the leader of the Salafist group for preaching in combat. Nabil Sahrawi was reportedly shot dead along with 4 other leaders, including one of his deputies, Abi Abdelaziz alias Okacha Al-Para, in the mountainous Bijaya area east of the capital, Algiers.
The Algerian military has killed the leader of an Islamic organization with ties to Al-Qaeda. The army said in a statement that it killed several people, including Nabil Sahrawi alias Mustafa Abu Ibrahim, chief of the group known as the Salafist Group for Preaching in Combat, or GSPC. It said they died in the province of Bijaya, east of the capital Alger. It did not say when they were killed, but said the military operation was still going on. The GSPC's first leader split in 1998 from the Armed Islamic Group, or GIA, to set up the GSPC, reportedly at the suggestion of Osama bin Laden. The two groups rejected an offer of amnesty put forward by the Algerian government in 1999 and have continued to wage their battle to establish an Islamic Republic. The GSPC is on the US government's list of so-called terrorist organizations and is believed to have some 500 fighters. It said it does not target civilians in the struggle against the unholy state headed by President Abdelaziz Bouteflika. In spring last year, the group kidnapped 32 Europeans trekking in Algeria's Sahara Desert. The hostages, 16 Germans, 10 Austrians, 4 Swiss, 1 Dutch and 1 Swedish national, were freed in 2 waves in May and August.
US officials and Iraqi leaders worked to pave the way for the June 30th handover of power, inviting Shah cleric Muqtada al-Sadr into the political process. But the violence continued to plague Iraq, with slightly more than a week to go before Iraqis take charge of most of their destiny, although some 150,000 foreign troops will remain in Iraq.
In overnight clashes, 3 Iraqis died and 11 people were wounded, including 2 American soldiers. Following a U.S. airstrike which killed 26 people Saturday in Fallujah, west of Baghdad, Iraqi police rejected U.S. claims that militants had been hit. In a separate airstrike Sunday, a U.S. warplane fired at insurgents, killing 4, after the group shot mortar rounds at a coalition base in the city of Samarra, north of Baghdad. Back in the capital, Iraqi National Guard soldiers were attacked as they patrolled Baghdad on foot. A bomb explosion killed 2 Iraqi Civil Defense Corps soldiers and wounded 14 others. An American Marine was killed Saturday. And South Korea's embassy in Iraq said it is trying hard to secure the release of a South Korean hostage after militants threatened to behead him on Monday, unless South Korea drops its plan to deploy troops in Iraq. Seoul announced it would start sending 3,000 troops to the country from August. And in a major political development, an Iraqi official said Shiite cleric Muqtada al-Sadr had been invited to a July political conference to select a national council that will advise Iraq's interim government. The US-led coalition had previously called for the cleric to stand trial before an Iraqi court for his alleged involvement in the murder of a pro-American cleric in April 2003. Sadr led a 2.5-month revolt against American occupation in central and southern Iraq. In a further step to try to end the violence, Prime Minister Iyad Alawi announced an overhaul in the defense structure, setting up a command and control structure with top officials reporting directly to him. In a separate development, pre-trial court-martial hearings were starting Monday in Baghdad for 3 U.S. soldiers accused of abusing Iraqi inmates at the notorious Abu Ghraib prison. Pictures of the abuse by U.S. and British coalition troops caused a worldwide scandal. In London, The Guardian Daily reported that Iraqis were, quote, tortured by British troops who killed some 20 in fighting in Iraq.
Iran hit back at the European Union, saying the 25-member bloc could itself do with lessons on human rights rather than criticize the Islamic Republic. The angry comments from Foreign Ministry spokesman Hamid Reza Asafi came the day after EU issues a stinging statement on Iran's human rights record. It was the European Union's big three, Britain, France and Germany, who on Friday pushed through a tough resolution at the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, that blasted Iran for failing to honor its pledges to come clean. The EU heavyweights have brokered a deal in October for Iran to cooperate with the UN watchdog, but in a sign of growing impatience, have now edged closer to the position of the US, which stands by its accusation that Iran's clerical rulers are seeking nuclear weapons and not just electricity. Iran has responded by toughening its stance, raising the threat of resuming uranium enrichment and accusing the Europeans of betrayal. In the US, the New Yorker magazine said Israeli intelligence and military agents are working secretly in Iraq's Kurdistan region and have slipped into Iran to monitor nuclear facilities. Israel's embassy in Washington denied the claim. The École Supérieure des Affaires organized its 5th MBA graduation ceremony in downtown Beirut, where a major French trade fair took place. 130 students received their diplomas from the school's surveillance board president, governor of the Central Bank of Lebanon, Riyad Salameh, French ambassador Philippe Lecourtier, and Hugues Durouret, president of the establishment board and member of the Paris Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Roger Rousset, ESA's director, spoke to Wajid Ramadan about the event.
How is ESA going?
Very lively. You know, we have a great idea, I think, today to organize a graduation ceremony in the center of the city. And our students have marvelous careers, not only in Lebanon, but also in the region. The courses are given mainly in French, but we also have courses in English. Because, you know, in the business life, some duties or some jobs are done mostly in English all around the world.
Four U.S. soldiers have been found dead west of Baghdad, apparently killed in an attack by Iraqi gunmen. The bloodied bodies of the 4 soldiers were found sprawled on the ground, surrounded by scattered equipment and belongings in the restive town of Ramadi. The dead soldiers were not wearing the helmets or body armor routinely worn by U.S. troops on alert. The U.S. military confirmed that 4 servicemen were killed, but gave no further details. The deaths brought to 619 the number of U.S. soldiers killed in action since the start of the U.S.-led war on Iraq last year. In Baquba, 2 guards were killed during a gun battle between insurgents and U.S. forces. And gunfights continued between militiamen loyal to Shiite cleric Muqtada al-Sadr and U.S. troops in Baghdad. Explosions were heard as a number of U.S. armored vehicles took positions in the main street of the city. Meanwhile, the U.S. administration in Iraq, Paul Bremer, on his farewell tour through Iraq ahead of his planned departure, stopped in Baghdad to say goodbye to the soldiers' task force in the capital. He was met by Major General Peter Chiarelli, who presented him standing next to a horse at the farewell ceremony with an iron used for branding horses. Bremer plans to leave Iraq soon after the June 30th handover ceremony. Israeli and Palestinian leaders are planning for the end of an Israeli withdrawal from 21 settlements in the Gaza Strip. A plan to assume control of Israeli settlements and military installations in the Gaza Strip after an Israeli pullout was drafted by Palestinian security forces. Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon told Jewish leaders that the government had asked for financial assistance from a Jewish fundraising organization to help settlers rebuild their homes. Sharon's plan to disengage envisages the removal of all 21 Jewish settlements in the Gaza Strip and 4 of the 120 Israel has built in the West Bank.
Following approval of the disengagement plan, the government approached the Jewish Agency with a request to take part in the challenge of relocating settlements to the Negev and the Galilee.
Meanwhile, Egypt said it would launch a campaign to promote its Middle East peace plan this week, starting with a visit to Israel and the Palestinian territories by its intelligence chief Omar Suleiman. Egypt's news agency MENA said envoys from the Middle East Quartet of Mediators will then meet in the Egyptian resort of Taba on Thursday to try to revive the parallel roadmap peace plan. Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak, who is in Germany for possible back surgery, will also send an envoy to Washington to press the Bush administration to resume the traditional U.S. role as mediator between Palestinians and Israelis. The news agency added that under Egypt's plan, the Palestinian Authority would consolidate and restructure Palestinian security organizations. It added that Israel would initially withdraw from the Gaza Strip and eventually pull out from all of the Palestinian territories. Egypt has offered to provide up to 200 security experts to train the Palestinian security forces. U.S. Assistant Secretary of State William Burns will be in Cairo tomorrow to discuss the plan and will represent the United States at the Quartet meeting. In the West Bank, Palestinian Prime Minister Ahmed Qrea said that Egypt's role is to assist in rehabilitating the Palestinian security forces after any Israeli pullouts.
It's not a condition, it is what we are coordinating about the Egyptian role to support the Palestinians for rebuilding, rehabilitating their security forces for the cause of to be able to impose the rule of law and to help for the kind of breakthrough in the peace process. This is what the Egyptian, and we highly appreciate this role.
On the ground, a Palestinian was injured by a rubber bullet fired by Israeli soldiers during a demonstration against Israel's controversial separation barrier in the West Bank. Israeli soldiers fired tear gas to disperse the stone-throwing demonstrators in Deir el-Ballout village north of the West Bank. The construction of the barrier has driven thousands to protest its intended path, which separates people from their homes, schools, medical and other essential services. In Gaza, Israel said a Thai agricultural worker was killed in an attack by Palestinian militants on the Jewish settlement of Kfar Darum. An Israeli military source said the man who worked in the settlement was hit by shrapnel from a mortar bomb. The Palestinian Hamas group said one of its men had exchanged fire with Israeli forces at Kfar Darum and that it launched several Qassam rockets at the settlement's to cover his escape. Palestinian sources said 5 Palestinians were wounded in the fire exchange.
The Saudi authorities vowed to continue fighting al-Qaeda terrorist elements without mercy. The Saudi Crown Prince Abdullah bin Abdulaziz called on these elements to wise up or else face tougher measures than they have already seen. Abdulaziz's political observer, Adil Jaber, said that the Saudi authorities have delivered a strong blow to the al-Qaeda organization in Saudi Arabia by killing their leader, Abdulaziz Mukarram. He pointed out that the Saudi authorities will continue their efforts to eliminate the rest of the organization from all Saudi territories. Meanwhile, the al-Qaeda organization published a statement over the net, vowing to continue their operations in Saudi Arabia. Al-Mukarram and other prominent extremists were shot to death by Saudi security forces last Friday, hours after the beheading of the American hostage, Paul Johnson. Russian oil pipelines were sabotaged in northern Russia, causing them to be engulfed in flames. Russian authorities said that the incident may be an act of terrorism. Oil leaked from a pipeline that passes near the Chechen border. About 60 square meters of crude oil leaked, covering an area of 600 square kilometers. Leaders of the Chechen fighters threatened to target Russian oil pipelines, power stations, and infrastructure. The war between the two sides has escalated in the wake of the assassination of the Chechen president, Ahmed Kadyrov, who was loyal to Moscow about 2 months ago. Meanwhile, the Chechen government, which is loyal to Moscow, revealed that 12 Russian soldiers and a police officer were killed recently when they were attacked by armed Chechens. There were no further details about these attacks. An oil official in Iraq announced that repairing the sabotaged oil pipelines is behind schedule, which impedes Iraqi oil exports. The Iraqi Prime Minister Iyad al-Alawi said that the sabotage operations against the oil pipelines has curbed the Iraqi exports and may continue to do so. However, he vowed to overcome the difficulties that halted the Iraqi oil exports, which have cost Iraq $750 million.
In an
attempt to assure workers in the oil industry in Iraq about the future of this vital sector, the Iraqi Prime Minister Iyad al-Alawi and the Iraqi Oil Minister Tamer al-Ghadban went on a tour to inspect the afflicted area due to these oil leaks. It is not known yet whether the oil leak in the Iraqi desert was caused by terrorists or by lack of maintenance over the years. Alawi said that the damage caused by the consistent attacks that targeted the oil infrastructure have cost Iraq $750 million. He described these repeated attacks as a crime against the Iraqi people. Al-Qaeda elements and some terrorists launched attacks against these strategic oil pipelines located in the south, completely halting the Iraqi oil flow through these pipelines. Officials hope that oil experts will be able to repair oil pipelines that were damaged so the oil flow can be resumed as soon as possible. Though, observers warn that the continuation of such attacks, especially during the season when the demand for oil is high, there might be negative effects on international oil markets, especially when considering that the price of crude oil has increased to its highest level in the past 20 years. Halting the Iraqi oil exports in the south happened when two vital oil pipelines in the south were attacked. These two pipelines were supposed to pump 1.5 million barrels a day from southern oil fields near Al-Basra to oil stations on the Gulf Coast. The main oil pipeline in the north, extending from the oil-rich region near Kirkuk to the Turkish port of Ceyhan, was also targeted repeatedly, halting oil flow from time to time. Furthermore, the amount of oil pumped through this pipeline has significantly decreased since the beginning of the American occupation of Iraq.
An
Iraqi official from the Fallujah security forces, appointed by the American occupation forces, denied that the attack that took place in the city of Fallujah, killing more than 20 Iraqis, targeted a secret al-Qaeda hideout. He confirmed that an ongoing investigation of the site of this attack shows no evidence of this, indicating that women and children were victims of this raid.
The scenes of destruction and death returned to Fallujah once again, renewing the memory of the month when the city was besieged and raided. The residents today buried a number of the victims of the American occupation forces' aggression.
Yesterday, at around 9:30, we were sitting in our home when we noticed the airplanes bombing. We did not know what was happening. 36 people were martyred and others were wounded. My son was among the martyrs.
The residents of Fallujah and the policemen here confirmed that no foreign fighters were present in the city, which was the target of an air attack yesterday. An occupation forces general said that they targeted a hideout of the wanted Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, one of the leaders of the Al-Qaeda organization. The attack killed 26 civilians and wounded 8 others. An Iraqi source confirmed that members of the Iraqi security forces have opened an investigation at the site of this attack, verifying that the victims were common people, including children, women, and the elderly. An Iraqi officer confirmed that the raid targeted a poor neighborhood in southern Fallujah, adding that a large number of people from the same family were killed in an attack that targeted their home. 3 children were among those killed. He denied the existence of any evidence of the presence of al-Zarqawi supporters at the home or in the entire city of Fallujah. He said that this attack was carried out without any coordination with the Iraqi security forces in the city. After it was confirmed that most of the victims were children, occupation forces tried to distort the picture with the announcement of Brigadier General Mark Kimmett, the Deputy Director of U.S. Army Operations in Iraq. He said that the raid was carried out on one of al-Zarqawi's hideouts and that precision-guided weapons were used in the attack. The raid is a reminder of a similar American attack on a wedding in the city of Qa'im in western Iraq, which killed nearly 40 Iraqis.
The Iranian Navy stopped 3 British military ships after they penetrated Iranian regional waters. In the process, 18 British military officials who were on board were arrested. Al-Alam's reporter said that the detainees are British Marines and they possessed weapons and spy cameras, in addition to detailed maps of different areas in Iran and Iraq. During initial investigations, they said they had entered the Iranian regional waters accidentally. The British military personnel who were detained by the Iranian Navy when they entered Iran's regional waters say it was an accident. However, they may have done that deliberately, especially when considering the advanced weapons and equipment they had on board. This possibility is strengthened by what has been happening in the Persian Gulf in the past 2 weeks. An Iranian fishing boat was seized by a military ship from the United Arab Emirates, and the crew was arrested. Several days later, a military ship from Qatar fired on 2 Iranian fishing boats while they were in international water, killing 1 fisherman who was on one of the boats. After the incident, the Iranian Foreign Ministry called on the Qatari minister in Tehran twice, asking him for an explanation about the reasons behind opening fire on the 2 boats, even though they had a license. Iran demands that Qatar release all detained individuals and pay them compensation. What is happening, which can be described as a war of seizing boats, is unprecedented, but it took a dramatic turn when the Iranian Navy seized several boats from the United Arab Emirates and arrested their crew near the Iranian island of Sari and Kashami. Maybe that came in response to the actions taken by the United Arab Emirates. However, the recent penetration of Iranian regional waters near the Iraqi border by British military ships increased tension to a new level.
3 British boats entered our regional waters, but they were intercepted by the Iranian Coast Guard. Now the British military personnel that were on board the ships are being questioned. We have to wait for the investigation's results.
This incident makes one recall the day when American ships penetrated the same location of Iranian regional waters. These kinds of incidents that always happen near or inside Iranian waters do not only create tension, but also raise questions about the possible objectives behind such maneuvers, especially when considering the timing, the geographic location of the incidents, and the involved parties.
Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities. And the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin.